Is it a dirty word, tax season? Tax season has officially begun, and it's shaping up to be one of the most complicated ever as the Affordable Care Act and IRS budget cuts impact how people are going to file this year. How do you navigate through this tricky tax code? Joining us now, Liberty Tax founder and CEO, John Hewitt. John, we need to start by telling people that for the first time in your 5 years of doing tax business, you opened your offices before January 1st. Why?
Yeah, believe it or not, it's an exciting time to be in the tax business. The Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, whatever you choose to call it, it's the biggest tax change in over a quarter of a century. And our surveys show that over a third of Americans, taxpayers, have a question about their own tax return regarding affordable care. That's over 45 million Americans.
And when you ask questions, normally many people would just simply for free call the IRS, but the IRS has about 3% budget cuts at this point, correct? So I was reading some horror statistics saying that you could be on the phone more than 30 minutes waiting just to have an answer to your question, right?
Actually, it's even worse than that. Last year, the IRS was only able to answer about 73% of their calls with a live person. This year, the IRS commissioner and recently the Treasury Secretary said that that's going to be closer to only half of the questions are going to be able to be answered by a live person.
Okay, so you mentioned that possibly the Affordable Care Act is going to be an impact situation, but then you also mentioned immigration. You've also taken some pretty steps that show offense versus defense. You've started a Spanish language network to help people do their taxes in Spanish, correct?
Yes, we have a new franchise system that's dedicated to just 100% Spanish. It has 100% bilingual preparers, and it's focused on this opportunity, especially the undocumented workers, the over 10 million undocumented workers, and at least 5 million of them are going to get some kind of status as moving towards citizenship in the United States. So it's another great opportunity for the tax preparation industry.
Are you finding that they're walking in voluntarily, or are they still fearful of immigration officials? And sometimes you put your name to a piece of paper and you file something, or they're honest and they're paying taxes on what they've made.
They come in slowly and reluctantly. There is an opportunity today for a taxpayer to get something called an ITIN, a special identification number, to file instead of using a Social Security number. And the law is that the government cannot go after them to deport them using that information. And so we've already done hundreds of thousands of those applications and gotten people their ability to file a tax return and get their refunds. However, they're doing that slowly because they're concerned that information is going to be used and the government's going to go after them. So it's trickling in at this point.
Well, listen, get people out there and on the grid, and then they'll pay their taxes, and then we'll have a discussion. I mean, I think a lot of people would appreciate that. Let's talk about a TurboTax breach. They had to shut down their site for a while because they found that there was an increasing number of fraudulent tax filings. How do you protect yourself over at Liberty?
You know, we've seen a lot of fraud in online as people do phishing and seize identities. So what we do is, when people come into our offices, we do identity checks. We require photo identification. So we have our own checks and balances. My 46 years of experience in income tax franchising is invaluable in putting in checks and balances to make sure that people don't take advantage. So we do a number of tests that help us to ensure that we don't get hit with the same kind of fraud.
Well, I guess you could say that the administration is also playing offense versus defense, in that they called you and a bunch of tax CEOs to Jack Lew's office, the Treasury Secretary, recently. What did he talk to you about? Did you find that useful?
Yeah, I was flattered that he called myself and the Block CEO and the TurboTax, so Intuit CEO and talked to us about how we could in the problem with them not being able to handle all the calls, and he's rightfully proud that the relationship between the industry and the IRS and government is at one of the highest points ever, certainly the best I've seen in my 46-year career, and just that we can work together to help get taxpayers certified and get fraud out of the system.
Well, John, everybody should know your doors are open at Liberty. And by the way, it is publicly traded, ticker symbol TAX. And you're up 35%. It's a smaller cap company. We like to let people know that. But nonetheless, congratulations, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Hewitt, thanks.
I may be knocking on his door.
Yeah.